My friends, gather close. Pull up a chair, perhaps pour yourself a cup of tea, because today we're going to unravel a tale that the tabloids will try to twist, contort and manipulate, but which, when told truthfully, reveals something far more human, far more touching, and far more significant than any headline could ever capture. You see, there are moments in life when the carefully constructed facades begin to crack, when the weight of what we've lost becomes too heavy to ignore, when regret creeps in through the gilded doors of even the most fortified palaces. And it appears, my friends, that King Charles III is experiencing just such a moment. It seems King Charles is finally awakening to a truth he can no longer ignore: the love and presence of his grandchildren, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet. Yes, the same Archie and Lilibet who, despite the vicious headlines and royal cold shoulders, despite being an ocean away from the pomp and circumstance of Buckingham Palace, have grown up surrounded not by palaces and stiff protocols, not by bowing courtiers and ancient traditions, but by warmth, love, and the values their parents, Harry and Meghan, hold so dear. These children, 6-year-old Archie with his curious mind and infectious laugh, 4-year-old Lilibet with her bright spirit, and her grandmother Diana's namesake, courage, they are growing up in California sunshine, not Windsor fog. They're building sandcastles, not learning to curtsy. They're being taught to question, to dream, to be authentically themselves, not to fit into predetermined roles carved out centuries ago. And now, according to Grant Harold, the King's former butler and someone who knows the inner workings of royal life better than most, Charles is desperate, yes, desperate to include Archie and Lilibet in this year's royal Christmas traditions. The word desperate is striking, isn't it? It suggests urgency, longing, perhaps even a dawning realization of time slipping away. But here's where this story becomes truly revealing. During Prince Harry's most recent visit to the UK, a visit that required immense courage, given the security concerns, the hostile press environment, and the emotional toll of returning to a place that holds both cherished memories and deep wounds. He did something that speaks volumes about the kind of man he is, the kind of father he's become. He gave his father a framed photograph of his 2 children. Now, let that sink in for a moment. Not a formal royal portrait with everyone in matching outfits and forced smiles. Not a staged photo shoot with Meghan included, which would have given the tabloids ammunition to dissect her expression, her outfit, her everything. No frills, no pomp, no performance. Just Archie and Lilibet. 2 innocent children captured in a moment of genuine childhood joy. 2 grandchildren who remind Charles of what he's been missing these past years. This photograph, this simple, powerful gesture, it's not just cardboard and glass. It's a bridge. It's a lifeline. It's Harry saying, without words, "These are your grandchildren. They exist. They're real. They're beautiful. And despite everything that's happened, despite the pain and the betrayal, I want you to know them." And isn't that something? Harry, who has been smeared endlessly by certain segments of the British press as bitter, vengeful, distant and unyielding, he's the one extending an olive branch. He's the one keeping the door open. He's offering connection through the purest symbol of love a parent can give his children. A simple photograph, framed with care, carrying more weight than any stiff royal handshake or performative balcony wave ever could. Now the whispers are growing louder in royal circles. Harold claims that this Christmas King Charles will almost certainly want a Zoom call with Archie and Lilibet. Just imagine that for a moment a monarch, one of the wealthiest men in Britain, surrounded by countless palaces and estates, too busy or too constrained by royal duty to embrace his youngest grandchildren in person, reduced to peering at them through a computer screen, while pretending the Windsor Christmas traditions are somehow intact and meaningful. What a tragedy! What a missed opportunity! What a shame! And yes, the King will send gifts to California. Expensive gifts, no doubt, thoughtfully chosen by staff, wrapped in the finest paper, shipped across the Atlantic with royal seals and proper postage. But here's what those parcels cannot carry: presents, time, memory-making, the smell of grandfather's cologne, the sound of his laugh, the feeling of his hand holding theirs as they explore the gardens. These are children he has barely seen, my friends. Archie is 6 years old now. 6! He's in school. He has friends, favourite foods, bedtime stories he requests over and over. He's past the baby stage, past the toddler stage. He's becoming a young boy with opinions and questions about the world. Lilibet is 4. She's talking in full sentences, expressing her personality, developing her own sense of humour and wonder. They're not babies anymore. These are little people with their own personalities, their own laughter, their own voices, their own dreams. And Charles has missed it all. Their first words gone, their first steps unseen, their birthdays celebrated thousands of miles away, their everyday joys, their skinned knees, their proud moments at school, their questions about why the sky is blue, or where do stars go during the day Charles wasn't there. He wasn't part of those magical ordinary moments that define childhood and bond grandparents to grandchildren. Why? Why has this happened? Because the monarchy and the courtiers who cling to its outdated rules like shipwrecked sailors clinging to driftwood pushed their parents out rather than embracing the fresh chapter Harry and Meghan offered. Rather than modernising, rather than protecting, rather than evolving, the institution chose preservation of image over preservation of family. Now the palace and its loyal tabloid servants will spin this as a grandfatherly gesture. They'll roll out the usual narrative. Charles is magnanimous, reaching out, keeping the family close despite Harry and Meghan's difficult behaviour. They'll paint him as the gracious patriarch, the forgiving father king, the wise elder extending compassion to his wayward son. But we must ask the hard questions, my friends. Where was this energy when Meghan was hounded day and night by racist vitriol in the UK press? Where were the palace statements defending her? Where were the lawsuits against publications spreading lies? Where was the institutional protection that should have been her birthright as a member of the royal family? Where was this love for Archie when his parents were stripped of security and forced to live in fear of credible threats? When they had to fund their own protection because the institution decided their lives weren't worth safeguarding? Where was this grandfatherly instinct when Harry actually begged his family to support Meghan through her darkest moments? When she was struggling with her mental health, when she felt isolated and alone, when the pressure became so overwhelming that she contemplated ending her own life. These aren't rhetorical questions, my friends. These are the questions that matter. These are the questions that reveal who we truly are when the cameras are off and the stakes are highest. The truth is clear as crystal. Charles isn't leading this reconciliation, it's Harry. Harry is the one holding the door open. Harry is the one making the effort. Harry is the one ensuring his children know who their grandfather is, despite the coldness and betrayal he and Meghan have endured. Harry, once again, is showing that he values family not as an institution to be preserved, not as a brand to be protected, but as a bond of love, as a living, breathing connection that requires nurturing and honesty. This is the same Harry who walked behind his mother's coffin at age 12 while millions watched. The same Harry who served his country in Afghanistan, not from a safe distance, but on the ground where it mattered. The same Harry who has spent years building Invictus Games to honour wounded veterans. The same Harry who chose love over duty, family over protocol, truth over silence. And what of Meghan? Oh, the critics will try to paint her as distant, as the American outsider who's keeping the children away from their royal heritage. They'll whisper that she's controlling, that she's manipulative, that she's turned Harry against his family. But look closer, my friends. Look at the actual evidence, not the tabloid fiction. This framed photograph of Archie and Lilibet, whose idea do you think it might have been? This wasn't a sign of estrangement. It was a gift, a gesture, a peace offering from both Harry and Meghan, reminding Charles that his grandchildren are thriving, that they're loved, that they're beautiful, and that the door remains open. Meghan has always been protective of her children. Yes, fiercely so. But who wouldn't be? Who wouldn't be protective after the racist headlines that mocked Archie before he was even born? After tabloid speculation about his skin colour? After the vile online abuse aimed at her family every single day, abuse that continues even now, years after they stepped back from royal duties? A mother's first duty is to protect her children, not to serve an institution, not to maintain appearances, not to please critics who will never be satisfied no matter what she does. Her duty is to her children to keep them safe, to raise them with love, to shield them from unnecessary harm. And that's exactly what Meghan has done. She's created a home where Archie and Lilibet can be children, where they can ask questions without fear, where they can express emotions without being told they're being too much, where their mixed-race heritage is celebrated, not whispered about in corners or used as ammunition by racists hiding behind keyboards. So, if Charles truly wants to embrace Archie and Lilibet this Christmas, if he genuinely wants to be part of their lives, not just as a distant figure in a history book, but as a real, present grandfather, he must first confront the mess that the royal establishment created. He cannot hide behind the pomp of Windsor Castle or the convenient excuse of distance. He cannot delegate this to staff or rely on protocol to smooth things over. A Zoom call and a couriered gift will not make up for years of absence. They won't erase the damage done. They won't rebuild trust overnight. If he wants to be a real grandfather, then he must show it not with performative gestures for the cameras, not with carefully worded palace statements, but with real, consistent presence, with humility, with accountability, with genuine effort to understand what Harry and Meghan went through and why they made the choices they made. He must be willing to have uncomfortable conversations, to listen, really listen, without defensiveness, to acknowledge that the institution he represents failed his son and daughter-in-law catastrophically, to recognise that protection of the monarchy's image was prioritised over protection of family members' well-being and safety. But here's the beauty of it, my friends, and this is what gives me hope. Archie and Lilibet already have what they need. They truly do. They have parents who put them first. Always, without exception. Parents who were willing to give up titles, money, proximity to power and public approval, to give up everything to ensure their children could grow up in an environment of love and stability. They have a home filled with love, freedom and authenticity, not duty and formality. A home where feelings are discussed, not suppressed, where mistakes are learning opportunities, not scandals, where being yourself is celebrated, not corrected. They have a mother who teaches them to stand tall against lies and cruelty, who shows them through her actions that grace doesn't mean silence in the face of injustice, that kindness and strength can coexist, that your worth isn't determined by your critics or your circumstances, but by your character and your choices. And they have a father who has shown them that courage sometimes means walking away from centuries of tradition to protect your family's well-being. That love requires action, not just words. That being a man means being present, being vulnerable, being willing to break cycles of emotional distance and dysfunction. What more could any child need? So let the headlines scream about a royal Christmas reunion. Let the tabloids pretend Charles is orchestrating some grand family comeback, some masterful reconciliation that brings the prodigal son back into the fold. We know the truth. This is not the king reaching down from his throne in magnanimous forgiveness. This is Harry and Meghan lifting their children up, making sure they know their heritage without ever sacrificing their dignity, their safety, or their peace. And if Archie and Lilibet do unwrap gifts from Grandpa Charles this year, it will be in a California home filled with laughter, joy and love, not in the cold, performative halls of a palace, where every moment is choreographed, every word is weighed, every expression is analysed. They'll open those gifts surrounded by warmth and authenticity. Maybe with rescue dogs at their feet and friends and chosen family nearby. Maybe with Meghan's mother Doria there, providing the grandparental love and consistency they deserve. Maybe with Christmas music playing and cookies baking and the kind of messy, beautiful family chaos that fills hearts and creates memories. That, my friends, is the true gift. Not the contents of those boxes, but the environment in which they're opened. Not the royal crest on the wrapping paper, but the love that fills the room. And so, as we look ahead to Christmas, as the days grow shorter and the year draws to a close, let us remember this. Harry and Meghan have never stopped fighting for love, for truth, for family. They've never stopped choosing what's right over what's easy. They've never stopped putting their children's well-being above public opinion or institutional expectations. And in the end, that is what will carry Archie and Lilibet forward, not the gilded trappings of royalty, not the weight of crowns and titles, not their position in some outdated line of succession. What will carry them forward is the real warmth of parents who refuse to let the world destroy their happiness. The example of courage in the face of unprecedented pressure. The lesson that family is defined by love and loyalty, not by protocol and bloodlines. The knowledge that they are enough exactly as they are, without needing to fit into anyone else's predetermined mould. That is the legacy Harry and Meghan are building. Not in stone and ceremony, but in the hearts and minds of two beautiful children who will grow up knowing they were protected, they were cherished, and they were worth fighting for. And that, my friends, is a royal story worth celebrating. If you found this perspective valuable, if you appreciate hearing the truth behind the headlines, please subscribe to the Sussex Spotlight. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss our coverage of Harry and Meghan's journey. Share this with anyone who needs to hear the real story, not the tabloid fiction. Together, we shine a light on the truth. I'll see you in the next one.